Captain Peter Cutsey with part 4 of the visual traffic pattern. Now remember, this is one of the most difficult maneuvers to fly, but also very satisfying and done at the beginning, or at least it should be done at the beginning of an initial type rating course, especially for ab initio pilots. The pattern is 6.5 minutes only, during which time we fly the airplane in different configurations, different thrust settings, with flap changes and gear changes, etc., and all to develop your skills in manually flying. The maneuver is done totally in manual flight. The autothrottles will be engaged for the initial selection of toga. However, the instructor pilot will disengage the autothrottles once takeoff thrust is set. So let's get right into the PowerPoint briefing with an overview. This is a quick look at Muscat. We'll be flying that in that area. It will take off here on the threshold of runway 08 left, and the right-hand pattern, because the first officer will be doing the flying. Here we are looking downwind on a track of 264, and this green arc on Google Earth is to scale, by the way, is 2.5 nautical miles from the center line of the runway. All right. The FMS will be set up by your instructor pilot, not for you to be too concerned about. It's full raw data, takeoff runway 08 left at Muscat, and the track for the runway is 084, downwind is 264. It'll be a right-hand pattern because the first officer will be flying, of course, from the right seat. No flight director, no autothrottles, and no autopilot. The surface wind, incidentally, is a 90-degree crosswind from the north, 350 at 15 knots. The temperature is 15 degrees and the altimeter setting is 1004 hectopascals. That's been set up in the airplane already, and we'll get to that in time. Autothrottle is to be turned off by the instructor pilot after N1 toga has been selected and takeoff thrust has been set. The IP will do that for you. Flaps 1 for takeoff. Flaps 5 will be selected at 800 feet above field elevation and maintained throughout the pattern. There's a 15-knot crosswind, as I mentioned, from the north in this particular case. Our takeoff weight is close to the max landing weight at 66,000 kilos. On the MCP, we'll set 1,500 feet above airport elevation. That's what we fly the traffic pattern at. Airport elevation 25 ASL, rounded to 100, plus 15, 1,600. So 1,600 on the MCP. And we'll set an MDA of the field elevation plus 500 as a reminder that you should be wings level and stabilized. And remember what stabilized means. No lower than 500 feet above the airport elevation and established on the center line. The instructor will do this. He'll make these selections that you see here in order to give you a picture on the FMS, which I'll show you when we go into the airplane. So that's how he or she will do it. Now, flying the pattern is as follows. Once you're given takeoff clearance, 40% N1, and wait for the EGT to roll back. That's approximately 2 seconds later, then push toga. And once takeoff strut is set, IP will disengage the autothrottle, rotate normally at VR 2 to 3 degrees per second to 15 degrees of pitch. Remember, you don't have command bars. Pilot monitoring will call positive rate on the barrel altimeter. Pilot flying will call for the gear up. Pilot flying, track the extended center line of the runway. Use the IRS track on the ND. Of course, remember you have a wind from the north, so you'll find that at 90 degrees, the formula is in the lower levels in aviation for any airplane at 90 degrees, your drift is 1/3 of your wind speed, in this particular case, with the true airspeed of close to 160 knots. At 800 feet above field elevation, simultaneously complete all the items below. Pilot flying will pitch down to 10 degrees, start a 20-degree bank turn, that's under no crosswind, and call for flaps 5. Pilot monitoring will select flaps 5. Pilot flying will start reducing thrust 80% approximately and maintain flaps 5 speed, then continue reducing thrust to maintain the flaps 5 speed. At the weight we are at today, you'll find that'll be close to 58% N1. So when the thrust reduction commences, it's almost a continual thrust reduction in order not to exceed your flap 5 speed. Very important. Now, all of these items here are done together. 20 degrees of bank is under no crosswind. The 25 degrees of bank, if you have a tailwind, or 15 degrees of bank if you have a headwind. This is based on a 30-knot, 90-degree crosswind. You'll find that works out very nice, and if the crosswind component is less than that, make applicable corrections. Pilot flying will level off at 1,500 feet above field elevation. Pilot flying will maintain flaps 5 and flaps 5 speed until changing configuration later. Pilot flying will track a rectangular pattern, track 264 downwind, in this case, for Muscat, runway 08 left. The wind is 35015 knots at 1,600 feet. So using 1/3 of the wind speed, 5 degrees is your drift, steer heading of 269 for a track of 264. Remember, pilot flying is manually flying. The pilot monitoring will make all selections on the command of the pilot flying. Pilot flying, when the aircraft symbol is halfway through the beam radial, pilot monitoring will start timing and advise the pilot flying timing. After 20 seconds, pilot flying call for gear down, flaps 15, and arm the speed brakes. That is only for a full stop, and also set auto brakes only for a full stop. Pilot monitoring, select gear down and select flaps 15 and set flaps 15 speed. That's at the 20-second mark. Pilot flying, advise the pilot flying when reaching the 40-second mark. Pilot flying at that time will call for flaps 30 or flaps 40, whatever he or she made in the briefing for this full stop landing. Pilot monitoring, select landing flap as requested and set VREF plus 5 knots on the MCP, plus any additives, minimum 5, maximum 20 for gusts. Pilot monitoring, advise the pilot flying when timing is 45 seconds. Pilot flying, commence a 25-degree bank turn to base leg. It's 90 degrees to the track, runway track. And start down at 250 feet per minute initially until picking up the poppy, visually, a usable poppy, and then adjust the rate to maintain your vertical path and call for the landing checklist. Pilot flying, when the tip of the 30-second trend vector touches the extended center line of the runway, start a turn while descending on the poppy to align yourself with the runway. Pilot flying, you should be aligned and stabilized no later than 500 feet above airport elevation. And in this case, we've set that as a reminder on the Barrow minimum of 525 for Muscat. Note, ensure that the, excuse me, the speed brake and auto brake are not selected if doing a touch and go. We'll talk about touch and goes in another briefing. Touch and goes will be discussed in a future video. And if doing a full stop landing, ensure that the speed brakes are armed and the auto brakes have been selected downwind. Pilot monitoring, ensure that the after takeoff procedure and the check is completed. Pilot flying, ensure that the after takeoff procedure and the check has been completed. May I suggest that you don't look at a checklist on your iPad? You have everything required on the control column of every 737 and a quick look down if you can't remember the very few items. But you're so close to the ground and so busy in this pattern, I recommend that you focus on doing the check, but do it from the control column. That's a suggestion. Why? Because it's airmanship and it's smart. Okay. All right. The traffic pattern I've broken down into 9 beautiful segments. There's the first segment. We're going to talk about that in the next video, which will be part 5. See you then.